I was born to 15 and 16-year-old drug addicts.
Okay.
And because of addiction, I was taken straight into foster care from the hospital. I was in foster care for a little while, and I was taken into my adopted parents' home. My adopted father was in the military, so he took out all of his trauma out on me.
There's times that I've heard stories, and I'll say to people when I'm preaching or teaching or doing weekend ministry events, here's some of my story, but honestly, my story is like a day at the beach compared to some stories I've heard.
I was sexually abused when I was 7 and 11 years old. 7 was by my babysitter's brother. My parents didn't believe what either event had happened. My mom was very close friends with my babysitter's parents, so they didn't believe that could happen.
I remember being so bitter and angry with God for the sexual abuse that happened when I was 5 or 6, and the early sexualization that happened through that, and the pornography, the exposure, and the same-sex sexual stuff that happened as well, and just feeling like, well, God, where were you?
I started attempting suicide when I was 12. And I just wanted to end all of the pain that had already happened in my life.
Eventually, the Lord opened up a door for me to get involved in an inner healing program called Living Waters through Desert Stream Ministries. And it was in that space, as I was a pastor now, that I went into for the very first time and realized, oh my God, I had no idea the chasm of woundedness that was still inside of me.
There is such a community that will come around you.
Yes.
And with your family, it's not necessarily blood as your family.
Psalm 68:6 says that God takes the lonely and puts them in family.
Yeah.
And it's just such a beautiful picture of the heart of God. Like he longs for us. He created us for connection and relationship, and he longs for us to be in those connections.
Welcome to the Love and Truth Network podcast, your guide for hope and healing in a hurting world searching for truth. Here we explore God's extraordinary design for biblical sexuality, identity, and authentic community. You'll be impacted by incredible stories of transformation, practical wisdom from pastors and counselors, and the power of God's grace that changes lives.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Love and Truth Network podcast. We're so glad that you're here with us. And once again, we are at the American Association of Christian Counselors Conference. You'll probably hear some noise in the background. There's a lot of traffic kind of around us, and there's lulls and then highs, where there's very few people around, then a whole slew of people, so kind of a tsunami. And if you hear some noise in the background, that's what's going on. But I just think it kind of adds to the excitement of where we're at. We get to exhibit here. We're partnered with another incredible ministry called Bloom in the Dark, and Paula Wallace and I came together and partnered financially for us to share booth space. But there's a total of 7 other ministries who are here all together in this kind of 4-part booth space, and it's been super fun to just be united around the common theme that's here. There's 7,000 to 8,000 Christian counselors here at this particular conference at the Opryland in the Gaylord Opryland in Nashville, Tennessee. And so again, we're excited to be here. We so appreciate you for joining us for this episode, and I'm excited too that Jamie has joined us. She has a powerful testimony of brokenness and a lot of trial and struggle, and how God met her in those places, and how he's working to transform her life directly through himself, but I believe also through community. So I know you're going to really appreciate this. So Jamie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you here. So I'd just love to kind of back up and have you begin your story, kind of origin story, and fill in some of the kind of common gaps of mom, dad, brothers, sisters, where you grew up, that kind of stuff, and just kind of launch into your story a little bit.
Okay, so I'm originally from Illinois, and I was born to 15 and 16-year-old drug addicts.
Okay.
And because of addiction, I was taken straight into foster care from the hospital. And so my birth mother actually never saw me whenever I was born because of the drugs that were in her system whenever I was born.
Wow.
And the only one that did see me when I was born was my great-grandmother. And she actually gave me this Catholic saint little necklace and told the nurse, wherever this child goes, I want this to go with her. And 47 years later, I still have it.
Wow.
After all the chaos in my life.
That's amazing.
I actually still have it. I thought I've lost it a couple of times, and I would freak out because that's the only thing that I have of them.
Yeah.
But I do, and I think it kind of protected me a little bit. So I was in foster care for a little while, and I was taken into my adopted parents' home, and my adopted father was in the military, so he took out all of his trauma out on me.
How old were you when you were adopted?
I was 2 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the foster care system for 2 years?
Yes.
Okay.
And my mom, my adopted mom, is very much a narcissist, so I couldn't do anything right. As I was growing up, my father would tell me that I was never going to amount to anything, that I was never going to be anybody.
So anything but a beautiful adoption story, obviously.
Yeah, it's not at all. Not at all. And Garry Chapman's partner actually did an adoption workshop here about the 5 love languages of adoption, and it really opened up my eyes to a lot of things. I signed up to take it for me instead of for my professional development, and it was amazing.
Yes.
So my father and my mother used to tell me that I was supposed to go to another family, but they didn't want me because I didn't have red hair. So I grew up with a lot of abandonment and rejection issues. I was sexually abused when I was 7 and 11 years old. 7 was by my babysitter's brother. And then when I was 11, it was by a neighborhood kid that I used to go to a park all the time, ride my bike to this park. And the guy lived across the street from the park. And so I rode my bike home crying, and my dad told me that I looked ugly whenever I cried. So I started hiding my face, and I didn't realize that I did that until I was in my 30s when I took a Bible study on sexual abuse called Shelter from the Storm.
Yeah.
And so I learned how to isolate really young. My parents didn't believe what either event had happened. My mom was very close friends with my babysitter's parents, so they didn't believe that could happen, the sexual abuse could happen. And my father was also on the city board, so I very much grew up to where you don't feel, you don't talk about your emotions. You know, therapy is for the weak, and especially with my dad being in the military. He had that mentality already.
Did you have any other siblings?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I grew up as an only child, and I later found out that I had 2 biological brothers from my birth father's side.
Okay.
Who are both in active addiction today. And so is my biological father. My biological mom actually committed suicide. And so it's kind of crazy that I've outlived my mom, my biological mom already, and I'm only 47.
Yeah, so she committed suicide earlier.
She did.
What do you have any idea how old she was?
She was 30, like 38.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so she had a lot of depression. She was molested by her father pretty much her whole entire life. So she had a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And so she was also raised quite a bit by her my great-grandmother. And my great-grandmother had died that same year, earlier on that year. And so when she passed away, she didn't know how to live, basically, because she was so, like, reliant on my great-grandmother. And that was her world. So I had already met her by then. I met her when I was 19. You know, it's one of those very emotional reunions like you see on TV.
Yeah.
And so my adopted father actually like helped me find an address and stuff like that online. It was easier back then to find addresses and stuff because it's when the internet like had finally first gotten out or whatever. And so I went to the address. Nobody was home, but because I grew up 2 hours away from where I was born. So we were there for a family thing. So I'm like, I really want to go to this house. Nobody was home. And then so we went to the mall and then came back to the house because I told my parents, I'm like, I'm going back to this house before we leave. And so I knocked on the door and she came behind me and was like, can I help you with anything? And I took off. She was carrying a bag of groceries. She took off I took off my sunglasses as she dropped the bag of groceries. She immediately knew who I was.
Yes.
Because I looked so much like her. And so that day I learned a lot about my adoption, and I learned a lot about, where she came from and my biological father. My grandfather wanted me aborted because, she was only 14 when she got pregnant and 15 when I was born. So,
Wow.
And she said no. And for a while, they were not sure if I was even my biological father's or if I was my grandfather's child because of her getting molested.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of why he wanted me aborted also. But I learned that my biological father also used to prostitute girls and completely exploit girls. And that's how I came about.
Yeah. So the whole generational brokenness. So it wasn't just, a mom or a dad or your parents in general. Like it was this long history of sexual sin and immorality and incest and brokenness that just has been a part of your history and story.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then my adopted parents were very much like closet alcoholics. So they would never admit that they had a problem. And my adopted father is actually in kidney failure now because of his alcoholism.
Okay.
But he won't admit that that's what happened though. And my first drink was when I was 5 years old.
Oof.
He used to tell me to go get beers for him out of the refrigerator, and I used to try them and drink them. And they didn't care if we would drink at like family events, like me or my cousins. So alcohol was always available to me. And anytime that they would go away or I would be left at home, I would always have parties and we would get into their alcohol stash. And so I started doing drugs and drinking very young. I started attempting suicide when I was 12. And I just wanted to end all of the pain that had already happened in my life.
Yeah.
And when I was 13 is when I really started asking a lot of questions about my adoption. I grew up in the 80s, so like American Tail, that movie American Tail was out. So, and Fievel was so cute and like just looking for something, And I so related to that. And that song Somewhere Out There,
I sang that as a recital back in the day. So
really?
I love that song.
Yes, and every single time I heard that song, I would just think of my biological family.
Yes.
And that longing to want to meet them and to have them in my life.
Yeah.
So I really thought that meeting them would fill that hole in my life. And it didn't at all. I actually got into a very abusive relationship after I met her. The guy put me at knife point, threw me down a flight of stairs several times. I had my first of many miscarriages. I got into a horrible accident which caused the miscarriage. And I ended up not being able to have children later on because of all of the sexual trauma that happened in my life.
Okay. Wow. Can we back up just a little bit and talk about, you had that one time, with your mom, your biological mother, and was that the only time that you'd ever really been around her, or had there been other times?
That was the first time,
okay.
But we ended up staying in contact for about 10 years.
Okay, and what was that? Like you said, that didn't fill up the emptiness and the hole inside of you. What was it like to connect with her, I guess, and what did it, was there any kind of warmth or satisfaction in that, or was it just very disconnected?
No, I felt an immediate connection.
Okay.
Like that I never felt with my adopted mom. And she was constantly checking on me. We would write letters back and forth.
Okay.
She got to meet my ex-husband. So, and my ex-husband asked her permission to marry me. It was cute. So we had a lot of connection, we really did.
So there was a warmth there.
Yeah,
and
I ended up being her only child because my biological brothers are from my biological father.
Oh, okay.
So, because she had a lot of female issues and had to have a hysterectomy at a very young age as well, like I did.
Yep.
So it was definitely an immediate connection.
Okay.
Yeah,
How did
definitely.
your foster mother or your adoptive mother deal with that? Was she fine that you were connecting, or was there a sense of jealousy, or what was that like?
A big time jealousy.
Okay.
Yes, huge. Like she was kind of supportive at it at first, but she didn't really understand the connection that happened afterwards.
Yeah.
And it was like that until she passed away. Until
Okay.
my biological mom passed away. Anytime we would try to connect, she would get like just weird about it.
Yeah.
And, and I really thought that of all people, she would understand because she didn't grow up with her biological father. So, my grandfather never adopted her, but I mean, he was in her life since she was 8 years old. So I really honestly thought that she, of all people,
Right.
she would understand, but she didn't.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's another major traumatic loss
Yeah.
is finding your birth mother actually having good connection with, at least warm and affectionate connection with her, but she doesn't also, she wasn't very stable probably
No.
either through those 10 years that you did know her. Yeah. So how old were you when she committed suicide?
I was like 28. Yeah.
Okay. And so I don't want to move you too far forward in your story. So if there's some things you want to fill in, kind of coming up to that point, do that. But I'm also just wondering, my goodness, I mean, to me, that would, to finally find your mother and to have a decent connection, and an emotional and affectionate connection with her, no matter whether she was stable or not stable, to then have her commit suicide. I mean, I can't even imagine the loss that was like for you.
It was horrible. And I mean, to be honest, I still really struggle with it. Especially when I became a believer even, because I was told, I grew up in a Lutheran church, which is very similar to Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you were taught that if you commit suicide, you're going to go to hell. So, and I couldn't even tell you one sermon I ever heard in a Lutheran church. Like, I had so many resentment towards God.
Yeah.
And I went to Lutheran school, so I had to go to church.
Right.
But as far as paying attention or having a relationship with God, not even close.
Yeah.
And so I strayed away very easily. And I got really bad in active addiction whenever this happened to her. So I put a lot of blame on myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, if I wasn't in active addiction, could I have seen the depression and the really deep depression that she carried?
Yeah.
Could I have seen it? Or was I just missing something? Like, I asked myself a lot of questions. And so whenever I did become a believer, I asked my pastor at the time, and he, about, the hell thing, and he told me, he's like, you don't know what she was doing in her last breath. And I don't even know if she was a believer either, because that's something that I didn't really care about at the time.
Right.
So, but that really struggled with me. And then I came here to an AACC conference, my first one, and I went to a workshop on H. Norman Wright did. And it was about grief and suicide, and I walked out of the workshop. Actually, I ran out of the workshop.
Yep.
Because it was so much that was hitting me, like, all at the same time.
What year was that?
This was like 13, 14 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this conference is typically for people who are licensed counselors or biblical counselors or whatever. Were you studying for counseling? What drew you to the conference?
I was studying, and also I worked with somebody that had a booth here.
Got it.
So I was able to I became a student member.
Yep.
So I was able to go to a few of the workshops, not a lot because of having a booth here, but
right.
And so that's one of the ones that I went to, and I ran out of the room, and it's so cool on how God works at these conferences. And then I went to the bathroom to go like wipe my face and stuff, and there was a lady that came behind me and she was like, "Are you okay?" And she was telling me about but she had a booth here. And so I went to the booth, and she was from Boca, which is a half hour away from me.
Okay.
And she ended up becoming my therapist for like 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And I met her here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we processed a lot about my mom's suicide, and but it's still something that I really struggle with. And I took Grief Share, which is a great Bible study
Grief
on
Share,
grief.
Divorce Care, that put out by the same organization.
It's great.
Yes.
And I facilitated a couple of times. And last year I actually took Grief Share again because I've lost so many people to the fentanyl epidemic.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
and we were talking just a little bit, like you and I just met at this conference for the first time, a couple of days ago, and Paula introduced us, and you're here, I think, connected with her and working with her, and what we talked a little bit about, even for you being sex trafficked,
right.
And so can you talk a little bit more about that and the particular kind of sex trafficking?
So I met a guy through someone that I trusted whenever I was going through my divorce. And this girl was like, you guys are going to get along great. You guys are really going to connect. So it was actually on my wedding anniversary when I was separated that I met this guy. And so we started out on having sex the very first time we met. And we both got wasted the very first day that we met. And this went on for a year where he started grooming me. He gave me all of the designer clothes that I wanted. He gave me all the drugs that I wanted. And he was a big gambler. So, and my trafficking was called Romeo trafficking. I really honestly thought that he loved me. This was a boyfriend that I had for this went on for 8 years.
That's incredible. I think it's so important to pause just a moment in your own story and speak to young girls, to young women, to even to moms and dads that may have daughters or loved ones who are kind of caught up in a similar situation where the claim would be, well, this isn't sex trafficking. This is my boyfriend. And we've been together for so long. So in a lot of ways, I think it can be, even when people see signs that something's wrong, something's off, this Romeo sex trafficking can be something that could be, I think, a little more slippery to understand or spot, right? Talk about that a little bit for moms or dads or individuals that may be caught in a situation and they're not even aware, like, this is what's really going on.
So if you have a child that comes home and they have the designer purses or the designer clothes and you know that they can't afford it,
right?
That's something really that you need to look out for. Or if they are coming home really late. And my case, I got pregnant twice by this man, but he forced me to have an abortion twice. It just is, it's a different situation because you really think that the person loves you and it's not kidnapping. You really can't come and go as you please, but you kind of can. Because
it appears that way.
Right. So I had a job. I was a paralegal at the time. And thought that I was just an active addiction and that I was suffering from my divorce. And they had no idea. They knew this guy, but they had no idea the extent of the trauma that I was facing when it came to this guy. And so I continued to attempt suicide too, like multiple times. And I would get Baker acted. And the police Baker acted me. City of Miami police Baker acted me. The hospitals had no clue what was going on. Today, if that would have happened, because this was almost 14 years ago,
right.
So today it would have happened, it would have been a whole different story.
In what way, do you think?
I think I probably would have been able to get rescued earlier. They would have seen the signs maybe, because he was a big gambler. And so at first it started out where he had me sleep with his friends. And whenever they would do little poker tournaments and stuff like that. And it ended up going into bigger casinos, like the Hard Rock Casino in Hollywood that has the big guitar hotel.
Right.
That was one of our main places that we would go into. And there's another casino that's pretty big that we would go into it as well. And he was an avid strip club visitor, I guess you would call it. And so it ended up going into there as well. The back of the strip clubs. And, he would originally take me to, or have me go to hotels on 27th Avenue, which are horrible. They're like motels.
Yeah.
Where you pay by the hour, and they just, I will never forget the smell that's in those motels.
Yeah.
And so as we got into bigger arenas, I would have them start taking me to hotels on South Beach instead, because I thought, like, I'm more than this, I'm better than this. And the money would increase as well, that I would be charged for me.
Yeah.
So anytime he would win a poker tournament or anything like that, because I would be the prize.
Yeah.
So, and I was raped multiple times by Johns that would pay for me. And there's a fine line also between prostitution and trafficking. So a lot of people thought too, because I was in an active addiction, that I was doing a lot of this prostitution by choice, and it's not. And I have a ministry today on my own that I created, that we talk to the prostitutes on the street. And
what is that ministry called?
It's called Yana Recovery Center of Fort Lauderdale. It's YANA, and it actually stands for You Are Not Alone.
Oh, okay.
And we give them love bags.
Yeah.
And we put like toiletries and stuff like that into the love bags. And there's also a foundation that's called Rescue America. And they will do bracelets. And all it says on the bracelets is, would you like prayer? And it has a phone number. And so we put those in the bags as well. And a friend of mine actually did an outreach not too long ago, and one of the girls did want to get out.
Wow.
And that was just prostituting.
Yep.
And she was getting trafficked. So there is such a fine line. And, with the Diddy case that just came out.
Yep.
And him getting off on the sex trafficking charges, I never pressed charges on my trafficker because of the same exact reason why this Diddy case just happened.
Yeah.
I was so afraid because of being an active addiction and the prostitution and all this stuff that I was not going to be believed.
Well, and I think that's one of the ways too they intend to protect themselves, right?
Yeah.
Is they set themselves up to make it look like this is completely voluntary.
Yeah.
This is a consensual adult kind of thing, kinky sex or whatever.
Right.
And but people need to really start paying attention to know this isn't what these women want.
Right.
This isn't what they they thought they actually were with somebody who loved them and cared about them, and they were again being groomed, and it's this gradual decline in the relationship and farming out the woman, the girl, to be used by other people, and it's again a gradual enough decline, and also if you're dependent on drugs, I mean, there's so many ways in which. And you need to speak to this more than I do, but I imagine so many ways in which you felt trapped, even though technically in some fashion you weren't, but there would probably be some major repercussions if you tried to pull away and had to be pretty fearful about that. Talk about that feeling of being trapped and not knowing how to get out or where to go.
So there was a couple of instances where I actually could have gotten out, or if I did, he actually found me.
Yeah.
So the trauma bond that was between the two of us was so intense that I couldn't. And so I was told about Calvary Chapel, Fort Lauderdale, and I was also told about Celebrate Recovery. So, but before that, I went to a post-abortion Bible study, and they normally do not let non-believers into this Bible study. And I went through it, and they could tell that something was going to happen if I didn't, that I was going to die either by an overdose or was going to get killed or something. So I finally, to tell that something was working in me, I just wasn't really sure what it was. I still didn't believe in Jesus. But that's when I was told about Celebrate Recovery. And I finally went to my first meeting, and someone drove me to my first meeting. And while we were at the meeting, she actually also signed me up for the 12 steps. It's the step study that Celebrate Recovery does. That's for a year. And so I did it I didn't want to, but I did it. And I met this woman who was very influential in my life. She ended up becoming my sponsor for over 10 years until she passed away in 2020. And she ended up becoming like a mom to me. And she told me, or she taught me what positive, healthy relationships are supposed to look like. And I was still caught in this trafficking whenever I first got into Celebrate Recovery. But she helped me get out forever.
Yeah.
And so I changed my phone number. I moved from Miami to Broward County.
And so by this time, you're like done with this boyfriend.
Yeah.
Not, sorry, that's an awful way of describing him. This pimp or, abuser.
Yeah. And in November, it'll be 14 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations for being
you.
out from underneath that.
And recently, he actually, I don't know how he found me, but he found me. And this was like 2 months ago.
Oh, wow.
Very recent. And he was calling me at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I've had like 3 phone numbers since then. And so I have no idea how he found me. I don't know if he Googled me or what. Yeah. Because if he Googled me, he would have found it. And then he would have also seen that I talk about trafficking quite a bit.
Yep.
So, but I Googled the phone number that was calling me because I didn't recognize it, and it had him linked to the number. Okay. And that's how I found out it was him. And so all this trauma and these triggers and all
that had to be
stuff,
horrifying.
Like, it started coming back, and I contacted all my prayer partners and was like, please, like, pray. Like, Paula knew about it, and I just got sick to my stomach. And, you know, the bishop this morning was talking about forgiveness in the plenary session, and was talking about Charlie Kirk and his wife and the forgiveness that Erica was talking about. And whenever this happened, I really honestly thought that I had forgiven him.
Yep.
And whenever I saw him calling me again and all these emotions coming up, I realized that I haven't. And so it brought tears to my eyes this morning when with Erica forgiving the assassin, like all this stuff has been coming up a lot lately. And I am going to take Shelter from the Storm again in January, which is the sexual abuse Bible study. Yes. I signed up to take it again. Yeah. Because it's been so many years and just all these emotions coming back up. And I'm working in Miami again, and I haven't done that in 14 years. Because I was like in my little Broward and Fort Lauderdale circle. Yep. And so I ran into a girl at the state attorney's office of all places. I was there for a training. I ran into a girl that was very good friends with the girl that introduced me to him.
Oh, wow.
And this is just the last 6 months. And so I definitely I'm back in therapy. Yep. I definitely need to process these things again. Because, I mean, it just is...
For sure.
Crazy.
What are you doing in terms of what can you do in terms of like order of protection against him, or just making sure that you're safe in relationship to that?
A lot of prayer.
Person? Okay, yeah.
I have talked to Homeland Security because of my job. I work with sex trafficking survivors full time. So I have a lot of connections with Homeland Security, the task force in Miami.
Okay, good.
So I've talked to them. And because my trafficking did not happen before the age of 18, I can't press charges now. But if he continues to charge or call me, or if he finds me, then I can.
Okay.
So they said, you know, if anything happens, then just please let them know and they'll figure something out. Okay. I'm glad I have that connection now.
Yes.
That if something does happen, I can.
Right. How long have you been working full time in the kind of sex trafficking arena?
I've been at Camilla's house for about 6 months now. But I do have my own organization, which I started like right after I got out of trafficking. I knew that this was my heart and that I needed to work in this. I knew it. And I went to, whenever I was in that post-abortion Bible study, I ended up, when I became a believer, I ended up working for the pregnancy center for a little while.
Sure.
I ended up becoming the director of abortion recovery. And so I was invited to a trafficking symposium And because I didn't know that what had all happened to me was called trafficking.
Right.
I had no idea.
Sure.
So I went to this trafficking symposium, and there was like 3 women that were telling their stories.
Were
on
you
the
even
stage.
thinking when you went to this is something that happens to other women?
Yeah.
Not you? Okay.
Yeah. And they were telling my story. All 3 of these women had like little bits of my story.
Yep.
And I just broke. I could not believe that all this had happened. I mean, what I was going through was trafficking.
Yes.
Because I just thought it was trauma.
Yep.
I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a huge eye-opener. And a little bit, I would say maybe a year after that is when I started talking about my story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so how long has it been that you've been more open and public about your story? How many years?
Probably about 10 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit more about your relationship with God and how did that even kind of happen and form?
So Calvary Chapel, Fort Lauderdale, which is my church, they actually used to do New Year's Eve services. And I was in my 12 steps from Celebrate Recovery at the time. We were in step 3, which is turning our will and our lives over to the care of God.
Yes.
And so during the New Year's Eve service, I went. And then that's when I did the altar call.
Okay.
And that night, I was so tempted. I was getting text messages from all these people. You know, we have good party supplies, which is drugs.
Yeah.
And, you know, come hang out with us. And, you know, we have all kinds of drugs here for you.
Yeah.
And I had to isolate, turn my phone off, isolate that whole entire night. But I made it
and what
through
year
sober.
was that?
That was in 2010, December 31st of 2010.
Wow.
And it was amazing. It was just amazing.
So
and
you
God
made
has
it.
worked.
You made it through. So
Yeah.
you know the scriptures talk about the evil day. It talks about being really prepared for that time that the enemy kind of comes in like a flood.
Yeah.
And not every day. I remember talking to a biblical counselor, many years ago now, and just saying, I feel like, do I always have to be on edge and always alert and attentive that the enemy is going to come in, you know, every day? Does it always have to be this way? I feel like I'm tempted and I fail over and over and over again. And on some level, the scriptures tell us to be alert. You know, the enemy is crawling around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour, no doubt about it. But he also took me to a scripture where Paul writes about this idea of in the evil day, the day when the enemy really comes in like a flood. And thankfully, every day is not like that day necessarily. I mean, there'll be multiple days when that happens, but and it doesn't mean that we need to take our eye off the ball or get too relaxed or not be alert. But there are those times when he really comes in like a flood. And sometimes it's not after a big tragedy. That can be true. But sometimes it's even after a big and positive event of some kind, you know, a church event or whatever, giving our lives to Christ for the first time. And I think he loves to come in and convince us when a major spiritual thing has happened, or we've taken a major step toward Jesus, maybe fully committing to Jesus even, but taking a step toward Jesus. I think he loves to come in those moments and snatch that seed up, so that we feel like, oh crap, this isn't real, nothing really happened, and so after that New Year's Eve at 2010, coming into that, what were the days like after kind of getting through that night? Like, you pulled back from everybody, decided to isolate and not have anything to do with drugs or any of that. What was the next day like, and what were the future days like after that?
So, you know, God definitely started working in my life at the time. I was doing the step study. I relapsed. I did relapse because I was a chronic relapser.
Yep.
And I did not use drugs just to get high.
Yep.
I used it to numb my emotions.
Yep.
So, and I ended up relapsing a few times. But while I was in the step study, though, I ended up getting 4.5 years of sobriety. And I let someone into my house that was using. That's when I started really going back to school.
Yep.
I stopped going to meetings.
Okay, yeah.
I thought that because I was getting a bachelor's in psychology, so in Christian ministry. So I really thought that those classes were going to be meetings for me.
Right.
And so everybody was calling me that were, I had taken a sabbatical from the teen ministry that I was serving in. And they were like, we're worried about you. And I was telling everybody that I got this because I let somebody in my house that was using. And my drug of choice.
Yep.
And I was also taking him to areas in Miami of where I used to go get drugs.
Yeah.
But I got this. And we don't have nothing until we go home to Jesus, you know, and it's...
What was a big reason that you let him into your life? Was it part of maybe emotional dependency, or this desire to be involved in his life in a way that was, it was meaningful, or just not to be alone? Or what were the reasons that you let him into your home?
I think it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
We were good friends. I met him in recovery.
Okay.
But, I almost felt like a little sense of that I needed to fix him and rescue him, and because he had gone through like a lot of brokenness as well. And we connected on that point, in that aspect.
Yes.
And so, and I tried to take him to treatment, and like I did my brothers as well. I tried to take them to treatment, and neither time it worked. Right.
I think one of the most compelling and dangerous places to be, and I've been there, is when we have such a deep need to be needed.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people get into counseling, a lot of people get into care ministry because they have an overwhelming kind of need to be needed versus giving out of an overflow of healthiness that God has been restoring in their life.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that maybe even when things are pretty good and we've been walking with Jesus for a long time, those emotions of the sense of how good it feels to be needed by somebody can really get a grip pretty strongly in our lives. It definitely did for me. And when we have that sense of the goodness of the goodness and how good it feels about being needed, we can start to make compromises of something that I know is a huge red flag. Well, but I'm not going to let this person out of my life or connect them with somebody else and take a step back because it feels too good to be needed by them. I don't know if you experience much of that or not.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I overdosed whenever I was out there again, and I almost died. I ended up in intensive care. And the first call that I made was to someone who is like a spiritual father to me, and he still is to this day.
Yeah.
I ended up working in his treatment center for a while.
Okay.
And he actually still talks about it because it affected him.
Yeah.
It really did affect him. So I didn't learn anything the first time. So 18 months later, I actually did it again.
Okay.
The same exact thing.
Yep.
And he let him back into my house and relapsed right away. But this time it was only for a couple of days. But a lot of money. And it was not by my drug of choice, really. Which is fentanyl, but it was on crack, and it was a lot. But that's my sobriety date now.
Okay.
So I just celebrated 8 years of sobriety in June.
Yes.
And I got my master's in mental health counseling. I'm a registered intern now with the state of Florida.
Okay, that's amazing.
And I have, I'm working in the sex trafficking, and I've worked in treatment, and so I'm going back and forth on whether or not to work in trafficking full time now because of going through Shelter from the Storm again. And I just don't know if I was 100% ready for it.
Right. Yep.
So I might end up going back to the treatment center that I worked at, who is my spiritual father is the owner of.
Yep.
Because that was home for me, and it was a lot of safety.
Yes.
And I need that right now, I think.
Yeah.
So I keep on going back and forth with this.
Well, and I know, for me, with all the sexual brokenness that was in my life, all the relational brokenness, and I just spent, years just in these revolving doors of relationships and one night stand. Shouldn't even dignify them by using the word relationship, but these, kind of one night stands, all this brokenness, seeking love in all the wrong places, and then being, getting dumped and then feeling worse than I did before and getting back into some awful situation with some other guy, in my case. And I just remember the misery of that and the agony of that, turning to alcohol over and over again to numb this stuff. But and also kind of the club life to the party life to feel, happy for a moment and, drunk as can be. So it was very fleeting and then felt horrible, that night and the next morning. But just repeating the same patterns over and over again, every day for months and years on end. But so I wonder, as I listen to your story, that there's times that I've heard stories and I'll say to people when I'm preaching or teaching or doing weekend ministry events, here's some of my story. But honestly, my story is like a day at the beach compared to some stories I've heard. And I kind of feel that way in listening to so much of what you've gone through, Jamie, and the stuff that you faced and the way that you've been, used and abused and just turning to different sources to try to numb the pain and quell the pain and feel okay, but we're not okay. So, but I know for me, even 20 years after really walking with God and beginning to surrender my life to Him and experiencing a lot of healing, going on staff at a church and working there for 12 years. And it was while I was on staff at the church that I began to understand I was kind of I felt like I was hitting a spiritual plateau. And I wasn't acting out anymore, whether that was porn, whether that certainly not hooking up with anybody. And so a lot of things were falling away. And I'm like, things are good. I mean, I get to minister to other people. I get to pour into them. Things are really good. But what's going on? I feel like something is off, and I don't know exactly what it is. And eventually the Lord opened up a door for me to get involved in an inner healing program called Living Waters through Desert Stream Ministries. Yeah. And it was in that space, as I was a pastor now, that I went into for the very first time and realized, oh my God, I've been confessing sin, and there's been lots of sin to confess, and I've been I've been really embracing discipleship, and I've been using the tools that God has put before us in terms of the word and prayer and community. So many things I'm utilizing the right way. I had no idea the chasm of woundedness that was still inside of me, the labels that had never gone to the cross, the shame that I felt, a complete sense of devaluing and self-hatred of myself. All of these things that were connected to my past from the time I was very little, being unplanned for and unwanted, by my own parents and all that. And I just know that even in being in pastoral ministry and now running Love and Truth Network, there's so much that God has done over the years to bring healing to those wounded places. And it sounds like you've experienced a lot of healing, and yet I would imagine there's still so much more that God wants to do. And it sounds like you're kind of talking about that a little bit, even in evaluating, well, do I want to really go into this full time, or do I want to kind of move into this space where I have more opportunity maybe to experience some of my own healing as well as pouring out?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very familiar with Living Waters, actually. Okay. I took it.
Oh, awesome.
I did, because of the relationship brokenness and my family and my parents. And
well, we were regional coordinators we were involved for about 20 years for our own healing, my wife and I, and she actually was involved longer than I was, even beyond 20 years. But then we were regional coordinators for many years with them. We love Andy Comiskey and love Desert Stream Ministries.
Yes, and I taught Cross Current as well.
Okay, me too. Yeah, that's great. So, and where were you when you went through those programs?
In Dania Beach, Florida. Lighthouse Community Church. Paul Osterman.
Oh,
was
yes.
the leader.
Yes. Yeah, Paul's a good friend. Actually, I've known him for many years. Okay.
Good guy.
Yes, very much so. But so talk a little bit more about I always want to paint a very realistic perspective for people that are watching or viewing our podcast, are listening to our podcast. And because there are times that God shows up in a miraculous way and boom, people are set free. I know that happens. I've heard those stories, but there's a reason those are called miraculous, because they're outside of the norm of what typically happens. Most people, God calls into this process of discipleship, this journey of discipleship. And so it's not that every area is like broken and you're set free, but it's this There's sometimes falling flat on your face and getting back up again and pursuing him. And there's more time of walking in victory than there was, in the past, and those kind of things. And those are all good, positive, forward steps. But so I never want to paint the idea or the picture of, I just prayed a prayer, I went to the altar and laid something down, even though that has happened. But it doesn't sound like that really has happened for you. It sounds like it's been more of this struggling, at times agonizing journey of just saying yes to God and continue to pursue him. Talk to people who relate to that story far more than just the God showed up and poof, it was gone.
So, like I had mentioned, I had this huge hole in my heart, and it was where I would try to fill it with men and drugs and all the secular things when I needed to fill it with God.
Right.
And, I have walked in purity now for like 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
And I know that, I don't know, but I pray that God has that godly husband for me one day that is not going to put a price tag on me and that is going to love me unconditionally.
Yes.
Because, God's the only one that really loves us unconditionally, but to where I feel that.
Yes.
Because
someone who really values you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Because there's always been conditions on the love that I have been given. It's from my parents, from boyfriends, from my ex-husband, like from everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's always been that. And so I really pray that one day that happens.
What would you want to say to listeners or viewers who are feeling that sense of being unlovable, or the longing and desire, like their heart breaks with your story, but they relate to it a lot, and they just feel like, I don't know, I'm not sure that there's anyone out there who will ever be able to love me, and that there's something inherently wrong with me, which is really the essence of shame. But what would you want to say to women, or maybe even men, that are wrestling in some of those ways?
Don't give up, and there is such a community that will come around you.
Yes.
And with your family, it's not necessarily blood as your family. It's
true.
The people that you want around you and that have been there for you.
We often say that the church is our second chance at family, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what's happened for me, is that my church family, my recovery family, they are closer to me than anybody that I could ever imagine. And I just had an experience. It was kind of weird. Just last week, one of my closest friends from Illinois was visiting me, and I haven't seen her in 4 years. But her and I are such on opposite paths now, and we barely had anything to talk about. And this was one of my closest friends in Illinois. And, someone that I can really consider my best friend, I lost to a fentanyl overdose, who knew me inside and out. And I could call at any, possible moment.
Yes.
And, when I was in my relapse, he knew that I was struggling and was more concerned about me than he was with himself. And I will never forget that. I won't. And, another one of my best friends, she comes usually with me every single year to the AACC, but she wasn't able to this year. And that's who we were FaceTiming this morning.
Okay.
But she's the same way. Like, whenever this, happened with the trafficker recently, she's like, I can be at your house in 15 minutes. Just call me. And my family wouldn't have done that.
Right.
They wouldn't have. And I really needed that. I needed not to feel the abandonment and the rejection like that I felt my whole entire life. And in that workshop with Garry Chapman and his partner, they had us do the assessment again on the 5 love languages. Mine has actually changed from when I have done it before. Now it's the words of affirmation, because I really never was told that I'm proud of you.
Right.
Any of those positive words like that. I never, ever was told that until I graduated from college with honors by my parents. And they still really don't tell me that kind of stuff. And even my mom even asked me the other day, she's like, are you still going to therapy? I'm like, it doesn't matter if I am or I'm not. It's not that you really are concerned with it. You're not going to ask me what's going on with my life anyway. So what does it matter?
Yep.
But the people that are closest to me know. They're like, how was therapy? Like, were you able to process
Yes.
your emotions today? Like, have you been able to process everything that's been going on, all the warfare that's been going on the last 6 months? And, is he still contacting you? Like, they would get more into it, you know what I mean? And
right.
I need that.
Yeah. I often quote the psalm that's Psalm 68:6 says that God takes the lonely and puts them in family.
Yeah.
And it's just such a beautiful picture of the heart of God. Like he longs for us. He created us for connection and relationship, and he longs for us to be in those connections. So even when our lives have been utterly devastated, and like I remember being so bitter and angry with God for the sexual abuse that happened when I was 5 or 6, and the early sexualization that happened through that, and the pornography, the exposure, and the same-sex sexual stuff that happened as well, and just feeling like, well, God, where were you, then? And also just feeling like, where are you when I'm praying and asking you to take these desires away, and all of those, and I developed very early on a lot of accusation against God, and it's funny how I would blame God for everything, but I knew that I didn't like the devil. I knew he was a bad dude and all that, but I always felt like, well, it's God's fault. I mean, he could do something about this, and it's his fault. And so accusation came up a lot for me over and over again, but now to look back and to recognize, oh Lord, I mean, forgive me, he has, but what a rebellious and also ignorant perspective that I had, because even in the midst of all of this, you are using all that stuff. You weren't happy that it happened. You were grieved that it happened. One of the beautiful things that happened to me in a Living Waters context in listening prayer was, for the first time ever in my mid-30s, for the first time ever, to experience Jesus weeping over what happened to me as a 5 or 6 year old boy, and grieving. Like, honestly, up to that point, I felt like he didn't give a crap. I just didn't matter, and it didn't really matter to him at all that this happened to me. And for the first time, now, theologically and intellectually, I'd say, oh no, God would never want that to happen to a child, but I couldn't connect to that emotionally for myself at all until Living Waters. And that experience shattered the lie, for the first time ever, shattered the lie that God didn't care, that I didn't have any value, that it didn't matter to him. And so, as we're kind of wrapping things up here, and you talked about someone, encouraging, hey, don't ever lose hope, that there's opportunity, and that your even biological family may let us down, but yet God and the family of God is a place where we can find refuge. But for many people, and maybe this has been true for you as well, but maybe not growing up in the church, it wasn't. But many people have experienced a lot of church hurt. And they've experienced a lot of people rejecting them within the church, and not just their own biological family. But I would say I experienced that a lot too, but I've also experienced authentic Christians who are mature enough, not perfect, and we do hurt one another, even without trying to love each other well, we can still hurt each other. And yet what God is able to do through them, and what God is able to bring to nourish us and bless us and to be family to us, is if we keep pressing in. Don't just give up, I guess is what I'm thinking. Don't give up even when you've run into people within the church that don't treat you well, because that's not the heart of Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how can people, again, you said it a little bit earlier, but if people would like to get in touch with you, or if your testimony has impacted them and they'd like to maybe follow up with you, what's a way that they can do that?
So you can email me, YANA@gmail.com. It's YANA recoveryservices@gmail.com.
Okay, great. Well, is there anything that you haven't had a chance to maybe share that's been on your heart a little bit that I've not asked you about, that you'd like to kind of wrap up and share with our audience?
No, just don't give up.
Yeah.
No matter what comes your way, because life does come our way.
Yeah.
Just don't give up.
That's true.
And continue to press on and seeking Jesus.
Yeah, and find those relationships within the body of Christ that can nourish your soul and nourish your heart. So,
and God
Jamie,
will never leave you.
Yeah, Jamie, thank you so much. You're so courageous, and I'm just so grateful that you took time to join us today.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Love and Truth Network podcast, coming to you here again from the American Association of Christian Counselors Conference in Nashville, Nashville, Tennessee. Bless you. We'll see you in another future episode of the Love and Truth Network podcast. Take care.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us for the Love and Truth Network podcast. We hope that the stories and insights shared have ignited in you a sense of God's powerful love for you and given you encouragement for your own journey toward relational and sexual wholeness. Remember, transformation is absolutely possible when rooted in grace, truth, and authentic biblical community. Subscribe today, share with a friend, share with your pastor, and we look forward to seeing you in our next Love and Truth Network podcast.